now be going to have a Q&A session. Let me go back to our wonderful speakers, and I would start with Mayur. I invite you to think about questions that you can ask Mayur. And if I do not hear any questions now, I will try to ask some questions myself. Let me know. Check the Q&A window. Here it is. There are questions for Maria currently. And for Mayur, I don't see any new questions. I will start going through the list of questions which were sent earlier. Mayur, I think this is a perfect question to you. What would be the best investment plan for female applicants?
Are you talking about in UAE, or is this for the citizenship by investments?
Well, this is the question that I received. There is no specific information, but I would propose that you share your immediate thoughts. I realize it's a very generic question, and therefore please feel free to tackle it the way you want, whether talking about a particular jurisdiction or offering some generic advice, which would be going to our female participants.
Sure. So let me just share with you a perspective what people are doing in these times. Which one aspect which I forgot to mention, or rather I would probably talk in a more elaborated manner right now, is if you are into a country in a particular market, and right now because of the COVID, the other stronger economies are a little weaker, they can actually shift. I'm talking about for the professionals like IT professionals, market analysts, for marketing specialists. UAE offers a very specific licensing program for these kind of professionals, and specifically I'm addressing to the female participants here. Most of them I see that they are into creative field like designing and IT consulting, these kind of industries. They can make use of this particular licensing program offered by the UAE government, and they can have a freelancer permits with which they can easily get a residency in UAE, and they can market their services and their products in the country and even abroad. The interesting part about that is they can have this set up at a very, very nominal cost. This is to boost, to promote the startups, the highly intellectual professionals, to bring into the country, and then to share and to let them to become the part of the GDP. I believe this area is something which the females or even the males can look into, where they can take advantage of this kind of programs offered by various authorities, and they can also take advantage of the different e-platforms which are offered by the UAE government. Even if you are just a simple freelancer or an individual professional, you have a platform available with which you can share your work that you have done so far. You can share your material or the programs that you have done, and based on that, you also get queries online. So the government is really helping to those kind of individuals who have really something to add value to the overall business here. And I believe this could be a very good opportunity for people in these different countries who would like to upgrade themselves and probably would like to try a different country and a different market per se.
Okay, thank you. Another question, how to structure small family business in a remote area? This is a question to all panelists, it says, but I think since you have started, you're free to continue, Mayur.
Sure, I would love to answer that. We have done structuring of family businesses, and we have been doing that in many jurisdictions. It completely depends upon what are the needs of the family. We have set up family offices in UAE. We have actually set up foundations, trusts in UAE, which is more or less works like a family offices, but it's much more on an advanced level. We have done that kind of structuring in Liechtenstein, Switzerland, or in other jurisdictions like BVI and Singapore. It depends really upon where the family is based, where the beneficiaries are based, and where the assets are located globally. Because it plays a very vital role in terms of inheritance taxes as well, because certain jurisdiction has a DTAA, which is double taxation avoidance agreement, with a lot of home country companies, so they get an advantage of that. Typically, for people who are based out of UK, they would prefer to go with Jersey or Guernsey kind of a jurisdiction because of the close proximity as well as the favorable regulations. But UAE has come up really with an interesting regulations for foundations. Foundation again is something, a product of a civil law tradition, and trust is more as a product of a common law tradition. But they have made a very good blend of both of these. I would say foundation is more of a hybrid of a company and a trust both. And in this scenario, this offers a very good tool for families and businessmen who are based out of UAE and controlling their business interests globally through UAE. We have done some similar structuring for clients who are having assets lying over 5 different countries, and we have successfully structured those businesses, and they are managing it very well. So it depends upon if the family's asset portfolio is very small, it can be structured in that particular jurisdiction, or it depends upon how complex or easy the family configuration is, and where the beneficiaries are based, what are the kind of tax risks they are bearing on. Depending upon that, we can suggest a solution.
Mm-hmm. And another one for you, Mayur. If an Indian citizen opens a company in Dubai and he makes profit in the Dubai company, will he also have to pay income tax in India on the income that the Indian citizen makes in Dubai?
Well, in this scenario, just to bear in mind, anybody who is extending his businesses or any kind of a commercial activity being based in India to outside India, they first of all have to take a proper legal opinion or a tax opinion from Indian perspective, because sitting here, we do not give any opinion or any advice in the Indian perspective. But to answer the question to the gentleman, is yes, they will have to. First of all, as far as I understand, anybody who is an Indian resident person has any businesses outside, they have to make a declaration. They have to declare it into their IT returns. Now, in certain cases, what happens is if they are owning certain businesses, but they are not actively managing those businesses, they are a passive investor. And the businesses are actively managed in those jurisdictions by independent professionals and employees. Then in that scenario, those businesses has to be reported to the Indian authority, but they are not taxed as far as they don't receive any income out of it. Like if you receive any dividend, any commissions, salaries, bonus, then only the person is taxed up to the amount of the income that person receives it. So that's my understanding. However, it will definitely depend upon structure to structure, how much involvement that the person has into that business, whether the control and command will be there in the person's hand or not. So there are a lot of other aspects will be looked at, but it needs to be structured very carefully.
Okay, thank you. And now to finish the suspense that we created by asking questions during the presentations, but not providing answers, I would like Charlie to go back to that question about a family based out of Hong Kong and a family office based in Singapore. And what about the jurisdiction and the applicable law in case of a dispute between the two? Charlie, is that something that you can talk about?
Yeah, I'll to a degree. I'll state here and now I am not a lawyer. Okay, but the question is quite interesting nonetheless. I think it depends on what the dispute is, by whom and between whom. Here it suggests, the question seems to suggest it's between family members. So to that extent, it will be dependent on where those family members live rather than the family office, I would suggest. I mean, the family office, in general terms, if they are playing that role in terms of family governance, family council, that sort of thing, they will tend to act as mediators between those family members. In other words, they won't be part of the dispute. But to go back to the question, generally speaking, my understanding is that you can petition courts to have a hearing, and it will depend on the views of that court as to whether they have jurisdiction over that dispute.
I think we're having some audio problems. At least I cannot hear Charlie at the moment. I am not sure if there is a problem with audio on Charlie's part. I have a message on the chat box to go to next question. Perhaps before I do that, I will try to comment on this one. As Charlie said, he is not a lawyer himself. Well, it happens so that I am a lawyer. So indeed, there is a problem with defining what the family office is here. If the question is about a family office being an intermediary, as Charlie said, between a certain family member and third parties, then I would say that the dispute between a family member is really with other family members and not directly with that family office. Because my understanding is that the family office acts on someone's behalf, but that does not create a dispute between that family office and other family members. Rather, here we're talking about a potential dispute between one member of the family who is not happy with another family member who has signed some sort of contract with the family office. So in that case, we would need to look at such issues as the place of residence of individual family members, and this would be mostly relevant for the questions of jurisdiction, and that is which court would be competent to hear the case. But let me explain that there is another problem which is often confused with the question of jurisdiction, and that is the question of applicable law. It can be so that a Singapore court would hear a case which would be subject to a Singaporean, to a Hong Kong law, and vice versa. And here, to provide a specific answer, really we would need to hear the circumstances of the case. And in my experience, this is really a hard nut to crack, not really easy to discuss during a conference. It is best handled by a lawyer or a family office, relying on very specific information provided by a client.
Adam,
yeah.
if you would like me to add something to that question.
Yes, please go ahead.
in this scenario, it's important to know what is the structure of the family office. Is it in the form of a corporate structure, or is it in the form of a trust or a foundation? Because then that is self-owned structures. And the second question is the very important question: the dispute is what? Is it relating to the assets under those structure, or is it something else? But if it is relating to the assets which is under the structure, then the law of the land will apply, and any dispute would be dealt about the structure in that particular land. But if it is owned in the form of a corporate, and the share ownership of the company or the corporate is with those people who are based out of Hong Kong, then the Singaporean court may ask them to get a probate order or a court order from Hong Kong, and then probably take that as a foundation to give their judgment. Probably that they would split these two ends, that what is the dispute all about? Is it about the asset, or is it about something else? Probably.
Yeah, correct. It would it would need to be clarified. As a matter of fact, it is not clear to me at all what is meant by a family office. Is it an intermediary, or is it a structure, as you're saying? It is not clear from the question. So it is best handled individually. Okay, here it is to Maria to talk about the difference between the Cyprus citizenship program and Malta citizenship program. Maria, are you ready to answer that question, or does it still sound too specific and requires more time?
No, actually, I make a research for the Malta scheme,
Really?
And it seems that the Malta scheme has significant amount of donations which are not refundable, and it's not like investment, and the investment remains to the investor. Because in Cyprus, the investment, apart from the 150,000, which also there are some expenses to save some money there also, you make an investment in any of the financial criteria, and you can change this investment, you can make profit out of the investment, and later on you can sell this investment and make profit also. So in Malta is something like donations, like investment, which will remain to the investor. Also is more time consuming, and it requires actual residence in Malta, while in Cyprus it's more fast, and now it's expected to be even more fast. And also it doesn't require actual residence in Cyprus, although it requires to hold residency for 6 months. It doesn't really require actual residency. Mm-hmm. So this is more flexible for the investors who are businessmen, traveling, having business, attending meetings, etc. These are the main difference I managed to find just by researching now in the web. I can, if the interested person wants more details, of course I can provide more analytical answer on this matter. And also I noticed that the same person made a question about tax. Am I right?
Yes, that's right. That's right. Someone has asked, I'm not sure if it's the same person.
I thought it was the same person.
About tax rates, and specifically, it was later clarified that the question is about the double taxation. Well, here we would need to know which countries we're talking about, right? For starters, if there is a double taxation treaty with Cyprus, you know, the standard classical questions. And if there is a double taxation treaty, which country we're talking about. So for the time being, let's talk about basics. What tax rates are there in Cyprus?
The corporate tax is 12.5% on profits, and the personal income tax is up to, it goes gradually, and up to 19,500 is tax-free, and then it goes 25%, and there is the amounts between, they are changing. So if anyone again is interested, of course we can introduce him to the financial controller to seek professional tax advice. Also, something important about the tax in Cyprus, there is no tax on dividends for non-dom in Cyprus. So this is another for foreigners who are not. So this is another advantage for foreigners in Cyprus in terms of tax. That's a general picture of the tax system in Cyprus. For any specific inquiries, of course, we can provide more advice.
Maria, just out of curiosity, if you allow me to ask a question, if somebody is taking the Cypriot citizenship and he has businesses outside Cyprus, would he be charged any taxes by the Cyprus authorities on those foreign businesses, or you don't charge global income?
If he's not tax resident in Cyprus, no, he doesn't have to pay any tax for foreign
incomes. Okay, interesting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Maria. There is more questions to you, but here, let me make a small comment. You're absolutely right in saying that to answer specific questions, you would have to know specific information, and really here we are talking about the essence of our profession, that is the consulting profession, broadly speaking. When there is a very specific problem, you know, here we're talking about an appointment with the professional, and they will provide specific answers. So here's we have a gentleman asking you about your specific services that your company is providing. I would simply ask everyone to contact Maria after our conference, and she will be more than happy to answer questions concerning the scope of their services, and of course to handle all possible instructions. Let me check if we have a better connection with Charlie. I would hate to leave Charlie without an option to provide more insight about privacy and the end of transparency, sorry, the end of privacy and a new age of transparency, that is access to private information. Charlie, I had a question from the audience asking to provide more war stories, if you like, to talk in practical terms about what you discussed in your presentation. Is there any typical example of an instruction from a client, you know, a family addressing your company that you could share with us, so that we could understand exactly what kind of services step by step you provide and how you help families to handle their problems? Charlie, can we try your connection? Is it any better right now? You have to unmute. I'm afraid we might be having some technical issue here. I see that Charlie is still on a mute connection, which may mean that he may not hear what I'm saying right now. I would say let's move on. And let me use the opportunity to answer some questions that are coming in myself. There is one question that I hope other speakers won't be offended when I say that it is best handled by myself, in that it concerns Polish banks. Are they ready to work with non-residents of EU companies now, and with Caribbean legal entities? This, of course, could also be generally addressed by Mayur and Charlie, but let me go to specific details concerning the current Polish banking situation. This is a very good question. Poland, for years, has not been on the main map of banking services for global investors, just looking for a very straightforward service, opening a bank account. But it has recently become a very hot forum for such services, for a very simple reason. I think because Poland was being neglected as such a jurisdiction providing banking services, these services have become rather liberal, and the general approach of the banks has become liberal. Currently, it is difficult to label unequivocally Poland as a liberal banking jurisdiction, simply because Poland is part of the EU, and of course it has to respect all the European AML legislation and the UBO regulations, and it has become much more difficult recently to open bank accounts. And yet I still am absolutely sure that for a structure which has been described in the question, a Caribbean entity willing to open a bank account in Europe, I think Poland is still much better positioned than most of other European countries, because we still live in that tradition of opening bank accounts rather freely. There are only very practical conditions that would be posed by the banks, which boil down to substance. Substance is something that has been frequently discussed in many Bosco events by Urs Sterniman, talking about Dubai, but this is really a universal question. In Poland, if you want to open a bank account and if you're a Caribbean entity, you have to prove to the bank that you have a concrete interest in trading with Poland. So, in other words, you have a client in Poland who demands that payments be channeled through a Polish bank account. So you need at least a contract. And often this would not be sufficient because, let's be honest, companies particularly those created years ago as part of tax structures or family office structures, that have headquarters somewhere in the Caribbean, are generally treated more and more suspiciously when they want to do business in the Western world. So in this case, what I would suggest is to open a branch office or open a subsidiary, something that Mayur was talking about in his presentation. Yes, I agree 100%. This is also something that we deal with when we help foreign investors structure their investments into Poland. We also deal with these problems. Every investment needs a good vehicle and a good structure. So this is, of course, something that the banks are familiar with, and they before opening a bank account, they would ask very simple questions. What is the purpose of that bank account? And if you just say, oh, because I love Poland and I want to open a bank account, this would certainly not be sufficient. If you show a contract that specifically requires you to open that bank account, you stand better chances of success. But would that be sufficient? I am still not certain, because one contract can be easily produced in today's global world. And banks, of course, are increasingly suspicious. So if you have a structure that makes the whole thing much more credible, if that structure shows some track record, that is, even without that Polish bank account, you can show that you have done some business and you have managed payments otherwise through a foreign bank account, and currently you require a Polish bank account because it's much more convenient, then I would maybe I would not guarantee a success in opening this bank account, but I would be much more confident. Let me go to other questions from the list. And again, this sounds like a question to you, Mayur. Making online money while traveling and working. Any thoughts? You have to unmute your, yes, that's right. Oh, again, click again.
Right. I'm
yes,
back.
Now you're back.
Okay, interesting question. And whosoever has asked this, I'm sure this person is really creative, because he wants to make money while he's traveling. The most interesting part about the global structuring is that you can create structures, you can manage it remotely. You don't have to be necessarily based in one jurisdiction, but mind you, you have to be tax resident somewhere. So from tax angle, it may pan out a little different based on where are you domiciled or where the majority of your businesses or assets are located. But pretty much all of these structures that we're talking about can be very well done in a manner that it is structured, and then you can manage the businesses remotely. Most of our clients for whom we do the structuring are not based in UAE, but they have global businesses and they keep traveling. There are cases for an instance where clients are not resident in any countries for that matter, and they travel very extensively. So it actually answers the question of the person, that they are traveling, and while they're traveling, they're making money. But it depends upon what kind of business are you into, what is your expertise, can you deliver that kind of businesses. Those things will definitely be looked into. But if somebody has that kind of a competence, why not? You can.
Okay, great, thank you. And let me now read out a number of questions which basically discuss a common problem. Everybody is asking about what happens next, like what will the world be like in a month or in 6 months. Let me read out some of those, and let's then have a discussion, because I'm sure this is something that is pretty much on everybody's agenda, and I really count on having a good Q&A with you guys. So how will we be getting stability and growth in a pandemic? When do you expect the climate for investors to come to near normal? And how do you do good business in this situation with COVID-19? How asset management planners cope with the post-pandemic era? Eager to know how to manage business and assets online in this particular era. That's a more specific question. Maybe we can come back to that later. The minimum cost to set up an online business, again, a specific question. So those two, let's think about those at the end. But generally speaking, Maria, Mayur, Charlie, what are your thoughts? When we'll be getting back to normal? And if there is any chance we can really get back to normal?
Apologies, I've had technical issues, so I didn't catch the first part of the question, but I assume we're talking here about the impact of COVID-19. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Charlie. And I think what you can discuss best here is how asset management planners cope with the post-pandemic era.
Well, again, asset management isn't my field first of all, but I think like any business, clearly there's been impacts across the markets. I guess asset managers are going to have to look at the growth opportunities. They're going to have to rebalance portfolios. Quite how they do that, I'm not really in a position to say. It's a question of perhaps how they would react to any recession, because clearly we're in one, and it's going to be a significant one. It's going to last for a long period of time, is my view. So I guess asset managers will react very much in the way that they did on the post the 2008 market crash. That's really all I can say on that subject.
Okay, thank you. Mayur, what are your thoughts? Are we getting back to normal anytime soon?
Well, Adam, as Winston Churchill said once, that never waste a good crisis. The important part is not about getting back. The important part is what are we learning from this thing? I would certainly think that is the most important topic it should be, because we cannot stop pandemics or we cannot stop crisis, and it's always going to come back in some or the other form. The question is, how can you learn from it, and how can you prepare yourself for any future such crisis? And if you haven't learned anything so far, you weren't paying attention. That's what I would say. As far as crises are concerned, I mean, we have seen it in 2008, then slow down, 2012. It always keeps coming. We will have to align ourselves to the need of the hour. We have to, as we discussed in our presentation, you need to restructure, you need to re-engineer, and you need to redesign your whole model of businesses, depending upon how the world is moving forward. And that's the only way we can survive. We cannot work the same traditional way, the way we were working 10 years or 20 years back. We need to see what the future lies, and how the world is looking at it. So the whole idea would be not to wait for the pandemic to get over, but to realign yourself and grow alongside the pandemic. Don't wait for it.
Yes, I agree. Thank you very much. I am trying to share my screen again, but, because I wanted to address what Charlie has just said about a long recession. This is a very common view, but this is a view that does not take into consideration the differences in the development of many countries. Let me see if I can share it now. I think someone else is sharing their screen, or maybe this option is currently blocked. Mayur, aren't you sharing your desktop right now?
I don't think so.
Okay. Forget about it. Maybe I can share it later. But anyway, my point is, I was showing on my slides that there are parts of Europe where this recession is not going that deep at all, and where I live is one great example. For starters, all the forecasts, they say that Polish GDP will not shrink more than 4.5% in 2020. And considering a nearly total lockdown for 3 months, it's not such a bad result at all. And many forecasts, they predict a recovery already next year, so not even in 2 years' time, a positive growth. And there are a couple of more examples, more economies like the Polish economy. So I'm sure that this recession will be lingering around the world, but it will have different effects per country. So again, back to my point made during my presentation, I think everyone who is looking for investment opportunities should be looking at a number of markets. And chances are that they will find a market that has very good forecasts. Or on the other hand, that they will find a market which is going through a very hard recession, and it is offering plenty of opportunities. Bankrupt companies that are having problems with cash, but that represent very valuable businesses. They could be up for sale. And other companies that are suffering some transitional programs could be needing some financing. And let's say if you look at some corporate businesses issuing bonds, famous brands, wouldn't you be interested in investing, buying those bonds? So lending the cash that you have instead of depositing it in a bank account in the times of very low inflation and very low interest rates, where bank deposits practically don't offer any returns. Why not buy corporate bonds or government bonds? Why not invest in valuable businesses? I fully agree with you, Mayur. Let's not waste this crisis. And let's look again at this is just another version of what Warren Buffett was saying. You know, the quotes that I was sharing with you. This is really these are really the times of fear, and maybe this is really the time to be greedy. What do you think?
Very, very well said. You know, as they say, somebody else's loss is somebody else's profit. I recently read an article on the Forbes, which was saying, is Dubai is going to be the next Hong Kong? You know, given the tensions which are growing with the security bill there, and on the other hand, we have the Brexit issue, you know, with the UK which is spanning over the whole of Europe. It was very well articulated, you know, that particular piece of news which was shared on the Forbes, that Dubai is very well positioned in the middle of these two financial centers and can cater to the East and West equally well. So that's what actually we were sharing it with all of our clients since last 1 year, and you know, it was actually good to hear it from an institution like Forbes and Financial Times to accept that fact. And we have realized that there are a lot of businesses from emerging markets like India and Africa are actually eyeing at Dubai, at not just for a good financial facilities, but as well as a local trade hub where they can meet and do businesses with all the neighboring countries and meet them at one point. So same thing as you rightly mentioned about your jurisdiction, we're seeing a similar effect in UAE, where they find this as a very convenient place because it is equidistant from East and West both. It overlaps the time zone of East and West equally. And plus, with a very good connectivity from the flights, they are just one sector flight away, which makes this place, again, very interesting. So I believe there's a lot more things that people can still do. It's not the end of the world, of course. It's just that they need to look into the right direction. They need to talk to the right kind of advisors. They need to understand their strengths, the potentials of their own businesses. And I'm sure there are a lot of other opportunities to tap into.
Absolutely. Thank you. Maria, what are your thoughts? Do you see that crisis damaging seriously and then in the long term the Cypriot economy?
To be honest, I don't have much to add in terms of what you have already said. I see that in Cyprus, there is interest for new investments. I mean, we have foreign investors coming in during after the COVID period. So I see positive things coming. I see people that they really want to invest and find alternative options and sources and sectors to invest in. I don't think that, of course, it will be a new reality, but I don't think that there will not be more growth in terms of the economy. Because we have to be creative, and when you want to be creative, you find the solutions and ways to do business.
That's very well said. And I also see a very nice comment from the audience. My definition of fear: face everything and rise. I couldn't agree more. What I see in this crisis is that there are two opposing views. This is a classical tale of those who see a glass half full and those who see a glass half empty. Of course, there are all signs of a recession globally, but there are niches. There are niches in which you can see great investment opportunities, and it takes some professional advice. It takes some research to identify them, to go through various problems, various difficulties, and that's why these Bosco events are so useful, because you meet those professionals. And even though it is initially difficult to answer some generic questions, at the end, it is important to know those who have the competence, who have the knowledge and the experience to answer individual questions when they are presented, not in a conference, but in a direct conversation. That's where these questions are best answered. I am looking at the list of questions. I think we have answered most of them, and we had a very good discussion concerning the future of the world in the post-COVID-19 reality. And finally, I've left at the end these technical ones. What is the minimum cost to set up an online business? Again, this would need to be set in a particular context. The question is, what jurisdictions are we talking about? Are we talking about the cheapest jurisdiction to run an online business? I am not sure, because probably if we go to the bottom of the GDP list globally, we will find some places where there are virtually no cost to set up an online business. The question would be about the availability of the infrastructure. So it really is difficult to answer that question. Do you have any other way of answering this, Mayur?
No, actually, usually I reply to my clients that cheap is always expensive at the later stage. When you go for a cheap business, you always end up paying more, but at the later stage, and I prefer to avoid that. But to answer the gentleman's question, there are ways to set up businesses. When you say online, we need to understand a lot more in context, as you rightly mentioned, Adam, that what are the services or the goods they're going to provide online, what kind of businesses are they talking about, which kind of clientele they are looking for, which region are they targeting at, what is the background of the person, does their profile matches with the big business that they're trying to set it up. So there are a lot of questions to be asked. And then we can reach to a fine detail, because you need to design a business plan, you need to prepare a proposal, a project report, and then you present it to a bank. Because even if you get to structure a business for a very cheap cost, a bank will be hesitant to onboard you as a client. So it's very important that we understand the value of compliance, we understand the value of substance in this point in time, and then we talk about structuring businesses, be it online or resident businesses. So I would answer to the gentleman that look for options where you know that you need this kind of businesses, rather than going for just a cheap solution, or rather go for an appropriate structure which may have more a long-term life of that business, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. Here is another one, and actually it connects to this question which we're discussing right now. In which EU countries you can open a trading company but work with clients from other countries? Let me answer this question. This question really is about the meaning of the European Union. If you're talking, because it is asking about Europe. So within the EU, the binding principles are the freedom of movement and the freedom of moving capital and persons. So there are virtually no barriers in providing services or in trading within the EU. If you open a company in the EU, you're free to trade via that company with anyone within the EU without any problems. And another statement to make is that, generally speaking, if you incorporate in the EU, you could generally be trading with virtually anyone, because the EU is a real economic powerhouse, and it has signed a number of international agreements which generally would generally exclude all limitations, and they even exclude all customs and tariffs with most countries worldwide, with a few exceptions, countries from a very well-known blacklists. So it is always a good idea to incorporate a company within the EU. I have mostly experience of company incorporation in Poland, and Poland has the benefit of being a relatively cheap jurisdiction. So this is to answer the first question that we're touching on together with Mayur. With regard to online business, it really is mostly about the infrastructure. If the infrastructure is sufficiently developed, so if the internet connection is satisfactory, paradoxically, some traditional, well-developed countries have problems with the internet. Charlie is currently based in Switzerland, and look what's happening. It cannot be taken for granted where to set up your online business.
Actually, it's probably because I'm currently in the UK, so it must be the Brexit effect.
You're right. You're right. You said previously that you were based in Switzerland, so I also thought that you were currently staying there. But now it's completely clear. It is. Yes, an online business can be handled really anywhere within the EU, and any trading business can also be handled within the EU. why don't you incorporate in Poland? You know, I deal with company incorporation. Do you also do that, Mayur? Do you open companies in Europe?
Well, we do open companies all over the world. I mean, you know the list. But of course, we can open companies in Europe, in UAE, in Middle East, in Far East, in Singapore, Hong Kong, India, anywhere. Of course, we definitely have the infrastructure for online businesses. Not only that, but the government of UAE has recently promoted this particular model, and they have issued specific licenses for e-commerce businesses. And the one thing I was mentioning about the freelance permits, so there are certain initiatives which are run by the government in the UAE to promote this kind of models. But it definitely depends upon what kind of services the person wants to provide. We need to prepare a certain background, and then of course we can advise them on setting up of such businesses. But it's very well possible, there's no doubt about it.
Okay, have you ever opened a company in Poland?
Not really, probably I need to call you for that.
Yes, and please do. Do you know what's the lowest corporate income tax rate in Poland?
Not really. Probably you're the best guide for me in that case.
Yes, it is 9%. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is not to promote my home country as such. It is to share with you the idea that if you want to think about your investment structures, you should not take into account just the traditional economies. I am sure that you will find similar rates in other European countries. You do not have to go to the Caribbean. And in the age of tightening KYC and AML procedures and reporting procedures, where you have to report UBO, if you run any business, even if you have a totally passive, dormant company in the Caribbean, you'll have to report if it is the mother company sitting on top of your corporate structure. You'll have to report that. This is what Charlie was talking about, and this information will become public. So we're living in an age when paradoxically, it could be much more beneficial to start a business in a traditional jurisdiction, in a traditional place in the center of Europe, for example. The tax would be manageable, the infrastructure would be much better than anywhere in the Caribbean, and the access to that company, to the assets and to the management schemes of that company would be so much better compared to old style solutions involving some exotic jurisdictions, which are becoming more and more difficult to manage and more costly to manage. I think on this point we have exhausted the agenda. If you have any closing comments, I would say let's have 2 minutes to cool down and to offer those closing comments, and then we could consider the agenda definitely closed. Any closing comments? Let me start with Maria this time.
I would say that after COVID period, it would be interesting how the economy will be rise again. It will definitely do. We'll have many opportunities also in Cyprus. The Cyprus investment program also, let's speak about this also since we introduced this today. It will still be on, and as I told before, it will be also amended. So it might be more strict, but also attractive. The real estate in Cyprus is always a good idea in investment because it might fall, but also is in picture in the business in Cyprus. And let's hope for the best and see what the future will bring in terms of the alternative investments.
Okay, thank you. Charlie, any closing comments?
Yeah, I'd echo what you said actually earlier on, and when we were talking about recessions and depth of recessions, I think it's absolutely right that within that comes opportunities, and I think with all businesses of all types, it's how you take advantage of those and change, as Mayur said, from what did you learn from this crisis? I think we see more of things like this webinar, for example, as a different way of doing things from a traditional sort of conference type style with all the trimmings in a whatever location you choose. From my side, from viewing it from the family office perspective, I think what it's shown the client families, particularly, is the need to consider succession planning and all these sorts of things much more closely perhaps than they have done. It's made them realize that they are not immortal after all, and I think this is what, this is as service providers, how you can make a difference from that. We are in very much the close client relationship business. All the things that I've talked about today was just really one part of that, but all leading down to the same road of being a trusted advisor to a family. So I think we will, I think the world will recover. It always does from a recession. It's just a question of how long it takes. You were quite right, I think, in pointing out the opportunities, and they are there everywhere. Maria's just talked about the opportunities in Cyprus. UAE is another place I know it's on the rise. So, all in all, it's what do we all take away from this would be my closing comment. And the ones that don't change and stay the same will eventually wither on the vine and die, is my view.
Agreed. Your final comments, and please be quick if I may ask, because we really have exceeded our time. So I'm wondering whether anyone is still bearing with us.
Well, I would just simply like to thank all the participants today who joined us for the event, all the panelists, and of course, special mention to Adam, who has been, helping us out sail through this whole presentation. Thank you, all of you. I would just like to say that one important thing which I am taking back from this COVID situation is that now people do not hesitate to have a video call and a meeting over a video call, which was not the case before, and we actually was waiting for them to fly into the country. Now it has actually made the world a smaller market, and now we can simply just send them a link, get onto the call and discuss about business. I believe that's a remarkable thing that I see and I take back from COVID. This has made my business more easier. So I would say there are a lot more things to do. There are a lot more opportunities. You just need to be in the right place and just get moving on with this. So that's from my side, Adam.
Okay, let me thank you, all the panelists. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Mayur. And thank you, all those who have asked questions. And Jenny, the participants. This event really proves that the world is going on. Thank you, the organizers. Thank you, Bosco Conference team. Thank you for reminding us that we are still going on, and there is no time for tears. There's time for work, and there is time for fun. Thank you, everybody, and Have a good evening.